If you love secret tech off-meta compositions, I got the latest thing for you. There's a new composition rolling around Teemo 3, Sivir 3, and Kobuko 3, but without the Kobuko Hero augment. A lot of people made fun of this comp and they called it Kobuko No Hero Teemo. But for any non-weebs out there, we can call it Blades and Shrooms for short. In this episode of N2G, we're going to dive into what makes this comp really strong and show you why this is one high worth chasing. Before we start, credit what's credit's due. About late May, IGUANA from the Spanish community in TFT tweeted about a composition where you played Teemo and Sivir reroll with Kobuko 3, but no hero augment. People were very skeptical about it and made fun of it a lot. Back then, Babyguana was Grandmasters when he was tweeting about it, but now is a challenger player playing this composition multiple times and having success on EU. As for why this composition is better now, it has buffed Sivir and Aatrox 3, so it is more effective and dealing more damage. You can reroll with other players, which is good. If you see someone rolling a hero augment like Nico, Yorick, Shen, you can go ahead and reroll with them. And it's also just a fun comp because you get to watch people's backline dissipate. Just have your mushrooms and your blades bounce to the back and kill all their carries. The game plan is pretty straightforward. You just want to lose early to try to econ up, win a lot of the mid game if you can, and then bleed out late to a top 4. But the thing about bleeding out here is that this is a composition with a reroll that you can actually win because your top end is so powerful if you can get to things like Xayah and Rakan if you want to play on Altruist or trick shots. Stage 2 collects Sivers and Teemo. You also can play around Fortune for quite some time because you end up playing Kobuko and Teemo, so you might as well just throw in a Fortune unit, Zoe for example, and get a Storyweaver plus the Fortune and connect Sivir that way. Prioritize Sivir items. She really wants to have AD attack speed items with bows. Pretty impractical to expect to get like Red Buff and Last Whisper and Rudens. That's 4 bows. How are you gonna get that? So if you end up starting on a portal like a completed item anvil, that's one possibility that can help you snowball your Sivir. But don't be afraid of just slamming other things that just get the ball rolling. Rage Blade's a really common attack speed item that's good early and then falls off late game. Then you can go for Deathblade and Giant Slayer and other AD items that make sense. On stage 3, make sure you're rolling for Sivir 3, Kobuko 3, and Teemo 3, whether you choose to aggressively roll or slow roll. I usually recommend slow rolling above 50 gold because it's hard for you to get everything at the beginning of stage 3 if you roll to 0. If you roll down at 3-1, you might be in a situation where it's like you hit Kobuko 3, but you have like 4 or 5 Sivers, you have no gold, you're going to fall really far behind even if you're winning a couple of those fights, and you're just not going to have the gold to hit Teemo 3 and push levels and hit all the bruisers. So I recommend slow rolling above 50 gold, but as you might see in the upcoming video, there might be an exception to that. And then Kobuko items are really important because you want to make sure that he's super tanky. Dragon Claw and Redemption are his 2 best items. And then things like Bramble or whatever else is like a 3rd item that just makes sense, whatever you want. Teemo also takes any leftover AP. His best item is Blue Buff. Really good combos are Blue Buff Nashers and AP. He's also really good with Gunblade to heal your front line. And then if you don't have Red Buff, you can just put Morello on Teemo because you need to do something with your rods. Late game, pick combat augments because you want to have your lower tier units keep up with the higher tier units. And then level up and look for more bruisers or trick shots or other support units. The core units in this composition are Sivir 3, Teemo 3, and Kobuko 3, and then eventually you're going to want to tag in things like maybe a Riven. If you can go for Riven 3, great. Zoe is only there to tie in the synergies with the Storyweaver and the Fortune. You end up dropping her. You don't want to like roll for Zoe. I guess maybe you could go for Zoe 3. That would be kind of strong, but it's not a priority because ultimately you're going to want to take out Zoe for more bruisers or trick shots later. Then level 6 plus, you're going to go for all these extra bruisers, give leftover Tankums to Galio, leftover AP to Silas, and then Rakan ends up being a really good altruist. You could also just tech in things that make sense if you're in a spot where you get like a tome. You can go for Ghostly that tags in nicely with Aatrox, more altruists, a Fortune emblem, so you can always be racking up a little bit of Fortune. A lot of things you can do. Just look at your traits and try to make sense of what's going on. Let's hop on board with a streamer named Riri, who is regularly high challenger and also believes in this composition. Riri is regularly in challenger and streams primarily on the Japanese region, so you can check out his content below if you want to look at his Twitch channel because he streams very, very often. This portal is Prismatic Prelude, so we're going to look for powerful prismatic augments to help us get started. Our early shops, we are going to be holding things like Darius pair and Malphite pair, so we're clearly looking for a possibility of playing around the Duelist opener where you find a Kiana and all of a sudden ties together nicely with Yorick, the Umbral Duelist, and the Behemoth. That is an opener that is not nearly as crazy as it was before, but it's still strong if you can 2-star it. And in the end, even if you're going to be trying to angle for reroll comps, you still want to play good fundamentals and hold pairs in your early game. We have open bow, rod, and cloak, which means it could be AP or a Rage Blade start. Let's go ahead and break down the augments and see what's exactly in store. So we have Porcelain Emblem, which is not very good right now because Porcelain has since gotten nerfed and it's not necessarily as effective. Plus, Porcelain is much stronger in the mid and late stages of the game. Early game, it can be kind of weak. They recently buffed around Porcelain, so maybe you could take it, but in this case, I don't think it's very good. Level Up is okay. It's definitely for like the fast 8, fast 9 strategy, and we do have the ability to go for like, you know, a Rage Blade or Spark and try to play into like a 4 or 5 cost comp. So Level Up is very much on the table. Starter Kit is very hit or miss. You can hit some really insane early game tempo spikes. If you want to play Silas early and you get a Spark, you can just like play into that. You get an Ashe. I guess you have your Direction. I think Ashe can be a little bit dicey early game because it depends on your front line and how strong your front line is. But I don't really necessarily like Starter Kit that much because it feels a little bit gambly to me. You could get some awkward situations where it just doesn't feel like it does anything. But it's a fun option, so you can always take Starter Kit if you just want to have a little bit of good time. We keep Level Up and we roll options 1 and 3, and we get Radiant Relics and Prismatic Tickets. Radiant Relics is actually really strong to give you early game direction. If you have a unit you want to play around already, or you want to potentially lean into something based off a strong Radiant item. And an example could be if you get a Radiant Rage Blade, that might be a signal that you want to go into something like Bard or Ashe, and that gives you huge direction. Or you can get like one of the best items like Radiant Spark, and then save your Rod and Cloak for other components instead. Prismatic Ticket is going to be what Riri picks, and I think that it's an augment that people think that is better in the late game than it actually is in the early game. But the longer you have Prismatic Ticket, the more natural rolls you can get. And so it ends up being a very powerful pick early on that I think people underestimate. And if you get Prismatic Ticket, right now, currently in the metagame, it gives you access to a lot of reroll compositions that can be really good. So it's definitely worth thinking about. He finds a Sivir and Kobuko, and he's going to sell everything and commit to this line. I like that he sat up and his eyes are awakened right now. He's going to definitely go for the line. Okay, so Sivir, Rek'Sai, Kobuko, Garen, Teemo, and Riven are going to be the units that he puts in his team planner. The Rek'Sai is just early game alongside Garen, but those aren't like the priority units necessarily compared to the Sivir. He's getting free rerolls, hits Sivir 2, and he can immediately slam an item. In this spot, we talked about how Rage Blade is really good early, even though it falls off late. And so he could slam that Rage Blade and play around this Cloak, go for a frontline item, or go for Ruden's Hurricane. The reason why Rage Blade is better early is because you'll have fight speed naturally slower, and so you'll be able to build up those Rage Blade stacks and be able to get to that critical mass of crazy amount of attack speed to win the fights. It's like a win condition for if your opponents can't kill you fast enough. He doesn't slam the item, which I think is correct because he wants to see if he can put together a consistent lose streak. If he ends up slamming this Rage Blade and wins because of it, there's a pretty good chance that he's not able to continue that win streak because he's not going to level aggressively. And that might put him in an awkward spot where he actually win, loses. And you really want to make sure that you can have as much econ as possible. With Prismatic Ticket, your shops are going to be 50% and more effective, meaning that you need to have as much gold and economy as possible. So trying to lean into the economy as fast as you can is really important. Hence why making that 10 gold a couple rounds ago was really critical. We slam Rage Blade, and so now we're going to see if we can try to lean into winning. I do think that the Rek'Sai 1 is probably weaker than the Aatrox because the Aatrox has a little bit more HP, I believe, but not a big deal because he ends up winning anyways. Okay, we got a Cloak off of Carousel, and we're going to complete a Dragon's Claw probably to try and improve our front line. A lot of times you itemize Kobuko because you end up going for Kobuko 3, so you want to really make sure that he is super tanky. And we're going to be probably focusing on making gold here. Even though we're on 2-win, we're not going to level because we need that economy and we need those shop odds. Going up against Garen 3. Oh, he has Garen 3 from his Augment. I kind of thought that was a story champion for half a second there. I was sweating. So yeah, Garen is probably going to be something impractical to hit. He ends up selling it. I also like that he sold his Aatrox because that's a unit they can come back for later. Aatrox 3 is not one of the primary win conditions. We're rolling for cheap units. And so if we can get to Aatrox 3, great, but that's going to be much later into the game. Sell the 2 cost, keep the 1 cost, keep your board nice and lean, and collect value that way. This next fight, we're probably going to lose as well. It's level 5 going up against Jax 2, and that might be all she wrote for this round. We don't want to sell to make 30, though, and that's kind of a big deal, just to help get that 30 to 40 snowballing, but it's okay. Okay, his orb gives him Aatrox, and he gets the ability to make 40, so ends up selling pretty fast, had to make his decision. He is rolling some of his gold because he has Prismatic Ticket, and his odds are maximized, so this is somewhat of a rarer exception of what we're talking about, of trying to roll for 3-star units. And he hits Sivir 3 and stops there. So this is a really important thing to note, is that normally you do want to roll above 50 gold for everything else, but because he's playing Prismatic Ticket and he's rolling for multiple one cost, he wanted to go deep and try to see if he can hit Silver 3 and then start building momentum, because we talked about how you want to lose early and then win the mid stages of the game. So I like this play. It's going a little bit off the script. And now he's trying to go back to the team planner and figuring out what he wants to do. He's going to probably play around Zyra in the early mid game. Taking a look at these augment choices, we have Gargantuan Resolve, Lucky Ricochet, and Long Distance Pals. Gargantuan Resolve is more for the melee units. You don't really want that Gargantuan Resolve on any unit except for Kobuko, but Kobuko's not the star. Lucky Ricochet is probably the best combat augment we could have for this, so this is actually a very fortunate hit. And Lucky Ricochet is just going to give us the ability to bounce an extra time and kill that backline much quicker. Long Distance Pals is not actually that effective because you want Sivir and Teemo to kind of share the stats and get damage, but they don't share the same damage type, and they benefit from being close to each other due to the aura buff. So Long Distance Pals is just really awkward right now. Roll options 1 and 3, and it's Ascension, and you have my sword. Neither of them are particularly good. Ascension is not what we're looking for at the moment. We just want straight up damage up front, and that's what Lucky Ricochet can do. You have my sword is like kind of tempting if we were low on item economy and we had like an item that we can complete. But if you take you have my sword, yes, you have half of a death blade and you can get all these different sword items, but you have nothing you can make right now. He has open Tear and Cloak. Those aren't components that are particularly really good for Sivir at the moment, because you can slam a Shojin or you can slam a Bloodthirster, and neither of those are particularly good for Sivir. They are more for AP units, and you wouldn't take you have my sword to make Shojin for Teemo, because it doesn't really make sense, because right now we're leaning into Sivir as the primary carry. So we take Lucky Ricochet, and not to mention, by the way, gives you that Teemo. Fun little thing to note is that had he not rolled that deep for it, he would have gotten Sivir 3 the next turn anyways, but there's no way he can anticipate that. Thinking about what version of Kale he wants, he ends up going for the red Kale. He could end up have gone for green Kale as well to go for the reduction of armor and magic resistance. But the thing about Trickshot is that they actually bounce past the front line and go to the back line. And so what Kale attacks is going to be resistance shred, but it's not going to hit the backline units. And so we actually care a lot more about the backline axis of it. And I don't think that's that good right now to go for green KO. He's going up against another person playing bruisers, by the way. So his bruisers are going to be slightly contested. It's going to be a little bit tricky. He's thinking about selling the 30 because he needs to make his economy. And he ends up selling his Rek'Sai 2. We played Fortune and we have a 1-turn cash out. And the encounter is the Rakan encounter, meaning that you can recombob or take gold. Recombob here. It's actually really tempting because you can go for, you know, a 3-star 2 cost and do some really fun stuff. But it's too disruptive to our board. So we're just going to take the 5 gold because it's really valuable with golden ticket in particular. And as for the fortune, I like the cash out now because if you roll a 4 turn or more, or even 3 turns, it can be kind of awkward because you don't really want to keep this in longer than you have to get some reward. So just getting that gold is guaranteed. And now he gets to make 50 gold if he wins this fight, which could be really, really good. In hindsight, now that he lost his 3-2 round, that roll for Sivir 3 didn't actually work out. It was an aggressive play to use some of his gold to get Sivir 3 and stabilize. It does preserve some HP, but part of the reason why you would roll really deep on 3-1 is to win stage 3. And the fact that he wasn't able to do that is kind of disruptive. He's going to be looking for bows and swords off of Carousel. He already has 2 frontline items determined, so just wants to try and get Sivir items as fast as he can. There's a Kaisa with the sword on the Carousel that's pretty tempting. Ends up going for the bow instead. We're going to roll some more here. Every time we have free rolls, we're going to use it. Okay, so he actually levels so he can play in Aatrox too. And he did lose a little bit of gold economy to level to 6 because he's going to be 40 out of 50. But he's recognizing that he's going to try to roll for Teemo 3 now. And by being at level 6, he's not only going to be stronger, but he increases the chance he's going to find Teemo. And he's at 7 Kabukos anyways. It's not like being at level 6 means that you have no chances of hitting the 1 cost. It just means that you're reducing it. But over the course of a lot of rolls, he should be able to pick up Kobuko 3. This is actually a nice advanced play of recognizing that you don't have to stay at that level tier in order to get that specific cost. A lot of people say you roll for 1 cost at level 4 and 5 almost always, and then you level up afterwards. But he's recognizing that he's close enough, and he's on a kind of a little bit of a win streak since he won his previous fight. So he wants to win that mid game that we talked about. Janna encounter gives us the ability to roll for Sivir items. He's going to... Ooh, that one's actually kind of nice. Double Rage Blade. Ah, red buff and Last Whisper. That's actually perfect. Anti-heal and armor reduction. That's exactly what he's looking for. So ends up going for that. I thought Ruden's and Stoneplate was decent. This would end up being very, very good. And I think that's kind of the skill of the encounter with the Janna setup, because you have to really understand when to greed versus when to roll, because there's a lot of times where you should have picked something earlier because it was good enough, and recognizing that you can't go for Biss. In this spot, he recognized that he needed to go for a good combination to make 3 items Sivir as fast as he can, and he was rewarded for it by rolling aggressively. And now, look at the Sivir crushing through things. This person hit an early set on level 7, and they're trying to play level up, able to really benefit from that. Really nicely done. Okay, so we didn't full streak on stage 3, but we got most of the way there, and our economy is in a pretty good spot. Now we just have to hit Kobuko 3 to stabilize our front line and roll for Teemo 3 and get items for Teemo if we can. Okay, so we're just going to roll for above 50 here and see if we can get Kobuko 3. We have a lot of our bruisers. We're going to sell the Zoe because Zoe is not important. And we hit Kobuko 3. We're 1 off Teemo 3. And I think we just dip here until we start hitting a bunch of our things. Tom Kench probably better than Aatrox. Agreed. And we're going to try to cash out Fortune. If you didn't know already, the leaves that are glowing means you're 1 turn away from Fortune. And look at this. Sivir just melts so much things. If our front line can actually get squared away because we're playing a weaker board, that's a 4 bruiser diff. If we played a 2-star bruiser, would have been much stronger. We would have won this fight as well. And he's going up against level 8. He's level 6 going up against level 8. He almost won that fight. Let's pause here and talk about his augments. He's got some really interesting ones. Unified Resistance is really good with the bruisers, and the way he's positioning is just very simple frontline, backline. So very high value to keep his frontline strong and give him time for his Sivir to scale in the back. Well-fed is also really good because it's giving you so much extra HP, and it gives you another way to have those bruisers like Kobuko be very beefy. And then Magic Wand is, it's probably the least interesting take here. Usually you're trying to go for Magic Wand if you're going for an all AP damage type composition, but we're playing hybrid. Sivir is physical and Teemo is magic, so probably not Magic Wand. So I think it's going to be between these 2 options. I think we probably want to go well-fed because we're going vertical bruisers, and we're playing a prismatic ticket, meaning that we can go for things like Aatrox 3, Tom Kench 3. I mean, we sold Rek'Sai, but you can go for all those 3 stars, which means well-fed is going to be higher value than usual. Unify is also really good, though, and continues to scale as the game goes on because you just add more and more units. So it ends up being really powerful. I think I'm going to go well-fed if I'm him, but I could see either. Oh my god, he actually rolled his 3rd option, got Martyr. These are actually so good for bruisers because Martyr scales with the amount of HP you have. And guess what? Bruisers have a lot of HP. Man, it's actually really close. I think in these kinds of spots, you could look at the data and evaluate. My intuition says that Martyr is just stronger because you get so much flat HP with the 9%. And that ends up being really good with 3-star bruisers. So it's kind of the same thing as well-fed, but it gives you that direct combat augment to all of your team. The thing about well-fed is that it only heals the bruisers. A Martyr could actually heal things like the backline Teemo and Sivir if needed. So it feels like if you're going for like a big HP gap on your enemy opponent, Martyr is probably the way to go. Okay, so we're going to roll here and look for Teemo 3. We hit Teemo 3, and now we're done rolling on 6 because we hit Riven 3, Kobuko 3, and Teemo 3. And now we can just level and go for 4 bruisers and improve that front line. He's still playing Fortune, by the way, just to, well, maybe he didn't have enough time, 1, but 2, just keep collecting a little bit of that Fortune value as time goes on to continue to make his prismatic ticket really, really effective. And now we're starting to get to the critical mass of like, these bruisers just have way too much HP. And the Sivir is now ramping up, and Teemo is killing everything in the back line, and you finally see everything set up. From here, we see that he's contested on bruisers, like people have Silas and whatnot, so it's not going to be a high priority to itemize Silas. Right now, also, our components that we can slam are Sunfire Cape, and we already have red buff, so we're not going to do that on Kobuko. Instead, we're probably going to prioritize Redemption or some of these other really powerful percentage damage reduction items onto these bruisers. His opponent just forfeits. Oh, wow. Looks like his opponent did not want to deal with this. Very strong composition. He's going to try to complete a defensive item here, so he goes for a glove so he can get the Steadfast Heart onto the Kobuko. Just needs to get some form of actual tankiness onto this Kobuko. I think a common mistake people might make is try to put an offensive item on Kobuko here. He's just our primary tank. And now the game plan is pretty straightforward. We just try to push levels, add more bruisers, and try to see if we can cruise to a good finish. We're in a good spot to guarantee top 4. Can we do better than that? We're going against Umbral. Umbral can be a little bit scary because it gives a percentage execute. So their execute is going to deal more effective damage to us. We just have to reach certain thresholds, and then all of a sudden, like, our bruisers just lose a ton of HP. But looks like our Kobuko is just tanking enough. Look at that trick shot's doing a bunch of damage. Can Kobuko actually win this fight? I think he might be able to. Oh, it's so close. Never mind. That might be a little bit of a positioning diff because trick shots tend to bounce adjacently to the targets that they're focusing on. If he's on the right side, he might be able to have his trick shots bounce to the Alloon on the top right. So something to keep in mind, you want to line up your trick shots generally on the same side of the units you want to kill fast. Don't let them ramp up. The summary is, if you put your units close to each other, you counter trick shots. But if you separate your front line, you're making your units more vulnerable to the trick shot bounces. Going up against Baboom Kindred, which is a very powerful composition right now going into Fated. And the person's trying to clearly get into the Syndra dual carry as well. But Declaw ends up being really powerful. It's a really good item specifically on Kobuko to try to counter all the AP comps currently in the metagame. And because of the percentage healing it gives to the bruisers is very effective. Another Fortune cash out. We did it. Just getting a little bit of gold, taking his free rolls, and eventually just gonna push 8 and try to go for that 6 bruiser as soon as he can. He's just holding to the Rek'Sai and to that Silas. It's a redemption, which ends up being really powerful for this composition because redemption is really good for the percentage healing. He also can go for blue buff on Teemo if he would like. Now that I think about it, he has no Teemo items. He is going to go for redemption over blue buff on Teemo. I think I would prefer the blue buff on Teemo. I think this might be something that if he runs out of damage to win certain fights, it could end up punishing him. It's because blue buff becomes so effective for Teemo to cast very often with the trick shot bounces that he ends up doing mega amounts of damage. It's way better than adaptive and Shojin. It's okay though, because in the end, it looks like he just has way too much DPS. The Ashe can't kill it fast enough. There's just so much DPS to needed in order to clear these bruisers. So now he's beating the sniper Ashe board that was win streaking. Counter is Zyra. Is this the 3 components one? Oh, this is 3 of the same components. Ah, you know, this is actually really fascinating because he could have actually potentially have picked up a really good Teemo 3 items. Imagine if he took blue buff. He has a free component, and if you got offered Rod, you would be able to go for a full-on itemized Teemo. I understand that's not what happened, but that is something that could have happened, and that's a way you can theoretically play around encounters, which is kind of banking off of upcoming events that might give you things like itemization. That's okay. He ends up going for TG Teemo. In hindsight, he could have gone for blue buff plus guard breaker and then TG something else. He wouldn't have this redemption and steadfast heart though, which are pretty good items for his bruisers, but it all worked out okay because it looks like he has enough damage to get past all of these units. The Syndra 2 with Radiant Deathcap can't kill a Kobuko. Wait, what? How is this Kobuko so insanely tanky? 17,000 damage from the Syndra and still not able to close it out. This Sivir is insane. As long as you let her scale with an infinite frontline, she will generate so much DPS. Wait, this comp might actually be broken. We're going through the entire Fated Gauntlet. Another Fated player they have to chew through. Looks like Fated was very contested this lobby. Man, isn't it nice that we just played a reroll comp? We're big time chilling. Everyone else is struggling and contesting each other, coming up a little twit longer and flaming more dog on social media and Reddit. Meanwhile, we're just sitting back, you know, pressing the D key, nice, relaxing. Sivir 3, Teemo 3, with like Thieves Club's Last Whisper. It's not like this Teemo is doing anything crazy. And we're just beating all the meta comps right now. The Sniper Ashe Wardens, the Fated Syndra 2s. We just had to beat Lilia and Duelist, and we've gone through the entire gauntlet. Probably looking to go for a 3rd item on Riven here, just to try to multiply his items. I like Bloodthirster personally the most. Goes for Infinity Edge. Oh my, he wants to go for max DPS Riven. Oh, never mind. He actually took it for the Galio, so he had Galio too. I see. Okay, I mean, I think BT is also fine because Bloodthirster scales off the number of HP that you have, and so you get a shield based off your max HP. It would have been fine, but hey, he gets to play a little bit of extra DPS on Riven, which is pretty fun. Notice how he's also trying to focus fire and put all of his units on the same side. He has the Kobuko 3 and the Riven 3 with the Sivir and Teemo, just trying to make one side very powerful while the other side stall out. This Kobuko is walking to the back and soloing the Ashe alongside all the ricochet bounces. All right, I'm pretty sure this is a clearance to go to 9 and roll it down, or even just try to see if he can push to 10. He is so rich. He's going to be able to level to 9 and still have 50 gold. At level 9, I think he's going to want to add for a Altruist unit because Altruist has really good synergy with the Martyr and the 6 Bruisers. So he's going to definitely look for Rakan. If you can get to 10, I think you want to play something like Soraka for 3 Altruists, or maybe just like another good strong backline unit. Sometimes if you're playing Rek'Sai in the setup, you play Azir for the Dryad, but we don't play Rek'Sai in this comp right now, so maybe something else. Syndra finally gets past the Kobuko, and we might lose this fight. Oh my god. Wait, Teemo has D-Claw? Oh my god, so close. Honestly, that's a DPS on Teemo issue. That actually shows you sort of the downside of the choices that he made, which was not having like consistent DPS from Teemo to help those trick shot bounces and DOT burn down that Syndra. But that's okay. Man, we rolled really good items on this Teemo. Maybe we roll that a few more times and win the game. We're leveling to 9, and we're going to roll down, see if we can hit a Rakan. And it's okay we lost that previous fight because we were saving all our gold, and everyone else was spending their gold trying to hard stabilize. We could end up thinking about 4 trick shot. We do have Rakan, which can become Xayah, but we do end up making our front line weaker because we kind of built around the Bruiser with Martyr and all these item choices and whatnot. So at level 10, actually could just go into 4 trick shot and play around Kai'Sa too, which is actually kind of cool because that shows you that this comp can continue to scale and scale and not just fall off in the late stages of the game without any option. A lot of time with reroll comps, you feel like you're just stuck with whatever you have and you can't get that much stronger. 4 trick shot with Lucky Ricochet is really, really good. So it's an argument that actually it's better right now because it's not like he's playing particularly super powerful units with like an Aatrox 2. But I think that ultimately, like, if he chooses to stick with this board, he probably will win the game anyways. Because he's clearly beaten the Ashe board several times. And I guess at this stage, he's thinking about what do I need to actually close out my last matchup? When you're in these spots, you think about the 1v1 that you're never going to face off against. And just having that straight amount of HP is good enough because they have 4 Wardens that are hard to deal with. You have 6 Bruisers that have so much HP that Ashe can't cut through quickly. And they don't have a way to punish it because they don't have backline access. They're playing front to back. You should be able to outscale them. Okay, the Ashe player actually lost. So that ends up meaning that we might play against the Syndra here. We're rolling for Tahm Kench 3. See if maybe we can get TK3 to add just a little bit extra meat. Rakan 2 is excellent. Very nice. We're not really positioning our backline and we're just rolling, but that's okay. A lot of times in these spots, you want to position the Rakan to make sure to hit the big clump. So Rakan, you want him to target like right around here. He might actually end up doing that. But, oh wow, actually Rakan's such a beast. He actually went and exactly did that. Because Rakan's ability actually reduces the damage of whatever he targets. So it ends up being a really powerful effect. So that's one way you can also try to like, you know, let your backline scale. Oh, you almost got a double kill. It's 1v1 against the Ashe player, the final fight. I like the death cap here for Rakan 2 or Sylas. Sylas ends up being really good. Ends up holding extra Sylas, by the way, to go for Sylas 3, but the job is done. I'm pretty sure this should be a guaranteed victory. He's beaten Ashe every single time in the head-to-head, and he just keeps getting stronger and stronger. Tahm Kench 3 for added measure. His opponent concedes. He knows that he can't win. And there you have it, the Sivir Teemo reroll for a first. So there's the secret tech. Sivir 3, Kobuko 3, and Teemo. And using vertical bruisers with 2 trick shots, maybe 4 if the situation calls for, if your frontline is good enough, and using that to beat a lot of the meta comps. What do you guys think? Let me know if you guys have any other secret tech in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.